So let me take you quickly through a brief look at some of these events from our past, because they're worth noting. We have had individuals in our past who have stood up for us. And I'll take you to AD 61, Boadicea. Outside of Coventry, talking to her troops, she said these words: "I am fighting for my lost freedom, my bruised body, and my outraged daughters. Win this battle or perish, that is what I, a woman, plans to do. Let the men live in slavery if they want to." Yes, Boadicea battled not just for her honour, but she battled for the people's liberty and their rights. That was against an outside force. So let's go on a few years to the Earl of East Anglia in 991. And standing before the Vikings, an outside force again, how you actually discover you're a nation. And in defiance of the Vikings, he said this. And he said this to the messenger. "Listen, messenger, take back my reply, that a noble earl and his troops stand here, guardians of the people and of the country, the home of Ethelred, my prince, who defends this land to the last ditch." He showed his entrenched love for England and her people. But we cannot ignore what's going on in our past in our own country. Let's look at the events surrounding Simon de Montfort in 1265. But the most important year is 1258 in the summer. Those wise men, a group of men, gathered together, and they were there about striking a new deal for England. And they made this statement: "Our kingdom shall be ordered, rectified and reformed in keeping with what we think best." So we know from our past that a new deal can be struck, because it has been struck. It's just, have we got the will to do so again? The importance of that event cannot be underestimated, because it wasn't a British event, it was an English one. And we showed that we could change our future. When we look at our past, it is full of many characters. And I cannot stand here without talking about two of them. One of those is a man called John Bull. In 1381, on Blackheath Common, which overlooks London, gave a fiery speech, and he spoke with passion. And he said that all are equal, that servitude of man to man was introduced by the wicked. I love those words. They're English words. We've got from our past where we can stand. But when you look at the Peasants' Revolt, you see a character called Wat Tyler, a Kent boy. And he also stood there, because it wasn't a peasant revolt, really, it should be named more rightly a taxpayers' revolt, because of the burden of taxes on the people of that time. And he stood at Smithfield's meadow, and he said these words. And again, I love them. I think they're great words. There should be equality among all people. All men should be free. This is our past. This is our history. You see a country that is prepared, country that has individuals prepared to be counted, to stand up and look after the needs of their fellow man. But we also have our leaders. At one time we had Henry V on the 24th of October. I know he had a strong belief in God, but he stood in front of his troops and he said, "If my cause is just, I shall prevail, whatever the size of my following." I put that in because it shows why we feel we can win against the odds. When we look at our history, it is full of individuals. And it's no coincidence when you look at Elizabeth I and her strong words and Boadicea that England led the way in giving women the right to vote. They are our stories and should be cherished. But we've also needed to have reform in the past. And Henry Hunt, in 1819, in Manchester, St. Petersfield, bellowed out the need for parliamentary reform then. And at that time, just a few years later, after great unrest, Lord Grey told the House in 1830, and he said these words: "The principle of reform is to prevent the necessity for revolution. Reform is to preserve not to overflow. If only our government would heed those words. But I'm not going to leave tonight before I talk. What's very close to me is about the Taupada martyrs. As a trade unionist, I have to talk about them. And I talk about an ordinary man who on the 24th of February in 1834 got up to go to work. He said goodbye to his wife, but he was arrested and deported and convicted that morning of swearing a secret oath to the members of the Society, Friendly Society of Agricultural Labourers. He was sentenced to 7 years. George Lovelace, when he was sentenced, wrote this on a scrap of paper. He said, "I speak of tyrants' factions' doom. We raise the word, watchword, liberty. We will be free." Yet you see now that the cross of St. George, the symbol of England, is being banned from the Taupada Martyr Festival. Trade unions exist, congresses exist for Scotland, Wales and Ireland, but not for England. If English independence is to be avoided, it can be easily done so within the bounds of the Union by completing federalisation of the United Kingdom, which means providing in every area England with the same democratic rights that has been given to the rest. Only saying English elected politicians voting on English-only issues within a parliament and administration for England, that principle isn't heresy. That principle is not an outrageous suggestion. That principle is based on what our union has survived. It is up to a political party to recognise restoring democracy to England is the only way to save the union. Samuel Johnson was right. He that wishes to see his country robbed of his rights cannot be a patriot. There is nothing wrong with loving your country and wanting to be treated fairly. If a political party does right by the people of England, they will be rewarded for doing so, and they will not be forgotten. In conclusion, I talk about another Churchill, a poet, Charles Churchill, and he lived between 1731 and 1764. And he stated, "Be England what she will, with all her faults, she is my country still." Those words are true for me, and I get stirred up when I mention them. All we ask for is an English Parliament, an English government, so that we can be governed fairly. If that cannot be done within the United Kingdom, then English independence can only be the way forward for us all here.